Well, good evening, everyone. Is everyone ready and seated so we can start the session? Well, this panel, I think, is one of the more interesting ones that you'll see because it's very hard to get this lot of people together on the stage. And what we want to talk about today in this panel is about the next generation of what I would call value creators. And I say that because in many ways, the IT industry in India has been one of the best examples of value creation, wealth creation, employment creation. Uh, 25 years ago, the industry was about $50 million. Uh, this year, we've just announced the estimate, which is about $150 billion in just 25 years. So I know Harish Mehta, who's sitting here, when he and I were co-founding NASSCOM, our ambition was someday we could be $1 billion. It never occurred to us we would be bigger than that. In the process, what has happened is employment of like 10 million. This is an industry that sort of pays 60-70% of our oil import bills. And if you look at the overall value creation and what has been the impact, it's been absolutely phenomenal. But in many ways, there have been generations of what has happened in that sector. There was, I would say, the first generation, which was in the early 80s, maybe late 80s, when companies were getting founded, Infosys, NIIT, Mastech in the early 80s. I found mine, which is now Zansa, in the late 80s, when Harish was doing that. That was a different environment. Zero venture capital. You could take $8 with you when you traveled overseas. Zero domestic market. 160% import duty if you brought any hardware or software. It was a whole different ballgame. Much harder to create a business, and the only place you could create it is overseas. So it took a while for us to do it. Most of us had no money to start it. So I started mine with 7 lakhs, whatever anybody had. Infosys started in, I think, 80 or 81. In 99, almost two decades later, they were still not, I think they were $99 million. They were still not even $100 million. And all of us went to IPO with no external injection of capital because there was no injection of capital available. Then if you start to look at the 90s, particularly the later part of the 90s, then you started to have the second wave. That was more of the business process outsourcing companies. Raman Roy doing SpectraMind, Pramod Bhasin came in, spinning off Genpact. Many of those companies started to come in. And around that turn of the century, you got the first generation of internet companies. So you had a bit of internet, and you have a BPO a little earlier, and also companies that started to be first generation value creators that were not necessarily only internet. So if I take the non-internet companies, for instance, you had Patu Keswani with Lemon Tree Hotels. Some of us had created a venture fund in 99, 2000. Harish is here, called Infinity. And we helped fund and create India Bulls. But very little money was needed in those days. We put in $2 million and we owned 21% of India Bulls. Not today, unfortunately. But you had those kind of companies coming up. And then you had Sanjeev Bhikchandani with Naukri, Deep Kalra, Make My Trip, Just Dial. You started to have those companies. But venture capital was just nominally becoming available. And I'll let Sanjeev talk about his battles on VC money. But there's very little VC money. Like I said, India Bulls, we put in $2 million. Avendus, $400,000. That was all the funding that Avendus had. So it was a very different world. And now we have what I would call the second generation of internet companies. Ola Cabs. You have Zomato, you hear about Snapdeal, Flipkart, you know, you Paytm, you have all kinds of companies. And they're taking things to a different level. So I thought this evening on the panel, we'll talk a bit about what's changed, where it's going, what are the new models, and what are now the possibilities of wealth creation. So you have introduction to all of the panelists in front of you, but what I thought I'd do is just briefly sort of tell you who they are. There's, on my extreme right is Bhavish Agarwal. He looks like a kid out of college, but he's the founder of Ola Cabs. Okay? And he had a career at Microsoft on research before he actually decided to find Ola Cabs. He got some angel funding from Kunal Bell at Snapdeal and a few others. And he'll tell a story in a bit. Next to him is Sanjeev Bikhchandani. And Sanjeev Bikhchandani founded, and Bhavish, you are from IIT Bombay.
IIT Bombay, 2008 I finished.
2000, okay.
IIT Bombay 2008.
2008, yeah. Now, Sanjeev Bikhchandani is the one person on this whole panel who was not at IIT. He went to Stephens, where he did his degree. And he was actually in the consumer business. He worked for Lintas, HMM,
Now called
GlaxoSmithKline, before he decided to venture out on his own, and actually did create a company out of a garage, on top of his garage, from what I understand. And that company essentially became Naukri. People know it as Naukri, but it's InfoEdge. And he created that. And Sanjeev has been around longer than them, very well known. He and I have both been presidents of TIE in Delhi. We've been on the global board. We're both part of the national committee at FICCI, also on the NASCOM board. He's had many awards. He's had the Ernst & Young award. He's been distinguished alumnus for both St. Stephen's, where he was, and also your other alma mater, right? Okay. Then there is Dipinder Goyal, and he's the founder of Zomato. And before that, he was in consulting with Bain and Company. And he's from IIT Delhi. And I've been around longer, so probably more of you know me, but for those you don't, I've sort of had three parts to my career. A corporate career, working for IBM and Unisys and the Tata Unisys group. A third being a serial entrepreneur, taking companies public, exiting. And the last third is really in investing, in venture capital, in the Indian Angel Network. Harish Mehta, who's here, we've been partners in crime on many things, NASCOM, and now also the Indian Angel Network. I think I must have done almost 60, 70 investments myself. So that's the panel. So the way I wanted to start it was to really ask each of these three a simple question. And let me start with you, Bhavesh, and say, so where and how did you get the idea? I mean, how did it start? What made you do it?
Sure. So 2008 is when I finished my bachelor's. I was at Microsoft for 2 years doing a typical engineering job, coding job, and there was always this ambition of doing something. And by 2009-10, there were already early inspiration stories like Flipkart and even Snapdeal to an extent. These were all already out in Naukri. So I said, I'll do something of my own. I actually went and set up a slightly different business called olatrip.com. And the idea there was I'll sell short duration weekend holidays and things online. And I ran that for 4 months. I didn't sell a single trip. But while doing that, when I spoke to all these customers, they said, trip mat do mujhe gaadi mein pahuncha do wahan pe, main apna hotel वगैरह खुद देख लूंगा. So that's where I realized, that's what the customer is saying. I'll change my model to olacabs.com. And that's, we were very nimble, if I can say that. So we changed to olacabs.com, started with a website for outstation and full day, half day, hourly car rentals. That was in end 2010, January 2011. Bootstrapped the business. When I told my dad this is what I'm doing, he said to travel agent ban raha, and he didn't speak to me for 3 months after that. Yeah, and so Looking back, it feels very, romantic. But the first 1 or 2 years was very, very tough because 2011, taxi business was not a very hot thing. Raising the angel round was the toughest round for me to ever raise. But after that, incrementally, we've gotten smarter about the business. We've learned more about the industry. Where today, we see the opportunity as actually changing the way India moves in our cities. People should not own cars. People should just use Ola or use transportation as a platform, as a service. And yeah, I think we've been incrementally improving that.
Where did you come out with the Ola name? What does Ola mean?
So Ola, literally it means hello in Spanish. But the reason I chose it was hello in Spanish. Yeah, yeah, HOLA. But you pronounce it as Ola. But it's a very nice, youthful name, and it has a nice, positive buzz to it. So that's the reason I chose it.
Very interesting. And while you're about it, let me just ask you one question. What is your business model right now? What is your business?
So our business is fairly simple. We give transport options to consumers on an app. We don't own any cars. We partner with drivers who own cars. Could be a taxi owner, could be an auto rickshaw owner. In Bombay, we also work with the black and yellows. And we charge a commission from each driver for the trips we send in. It's fairly simple like that. We charge around a 15 to 20% commission per ride.
So Saurabh, I'll tell you, most of the people in this room have cars and drivers. I also have a car and driver, so I almost never use a taxi. But when I see young people in my office, I mean, it has completely changed the scene on how people travel in Delhi, at least.
I personally don't own a car. My wife hates me for it, but I don't think my generation people will own cars. Maybe a lot of people have of one generation before have not bought the second cars. So I can see that shift happening slowly.
I mean, you really believe that?
I really believe that. So fundamentally, if you look at the numbers, 5% of Indians own cars roughly, and our roads are already screwed up. We just cannot own cars. Where will we keep the cars? Versus 70% of Americans owning cars, and with their wider roads, much better infrastructure. Indian cities have really bad infrastructure, and for us, our business model actually very well fits into the opportunity because people want to get around, mobility is increasing as growth is happening, but people cannot own cars.
So you keep talking like that, and all the car manufacturers will put out a supari on you.
We drive a lot of sales for them now, so I think they're okay with me.
Okay. Sanjeev, just share with us what happened to you in your room above your garage.
So, so I wanted to be an entrepreneur from a very early age, and after 5 years of working in industry, I said, now's the time. So basically the final straw was, I was working in GlaxoSmithKline, I was in marketing, I was handling the brand Horlicks, prestigious brand, multinational, FMCG, super job out of campus, supposed to be great. And, so what had happened was, 6 months before I joined, now HMM was this company where 88% of the company's sales came from Horlicks and 104% of the profits came from Horlicks. So nobody could take any decision on Horlicks unless the CMD said, yes, go ahead. Because it impacted the company so much, Horlicks. So essentially, although I was brand manager, it was the CMD who was the brand manager, right? And 6 months before I joined, somebody had come out with a bright idea that, listen, Horlicks has got a bottle with a blue label with a red border. India, gold is valued, so if you put a thin gold line between the red border and the, blue label, it'll create a value perception. And there was this committee was formed, and and they said it's too much of a risk. We must do a test market. Now, 26% of Horlicks sales came from one state, Tamil Nadu. So we will do a test market in Tamil Nadu, very important market. But we won't go to the biggest city. We will go to Madurai, one of the second level city in Tamil Nadu, and we'll test it there. So a batch of these kind of labels are printed, and they will put in the market. And like a good sort of, large sort of multinational, people forgot about it. And 1 year later, they woke up, hey, what happened to the test market? So, so I was sort of told immediately by the head of marketing, you are going to Madras tonight. That time it was Madras. You're going to Madras tonight, and then you catch the overnight bus to Madurai, which I tell you is a bad idea. Okay, and then you go and see the results of the test market and give a report. So that evening I flew to Madras. I caught the overnight bus to, to Madurai. I chained my clothes at the back of the bus because, and I couldn't shave and things, and I was all dusty and dirty. And I went to the market in 1990, in 1989, in Madurai. I didn't know Tamil. They didn't know English. If I spoke Hindi, I was probably going to get killed, right? And so I had this, local sales guy with me, and I would say, old label, new label, what do you think? And the shopkeepers would get really mad at me that why am I wasting their time? And I felt so foolish, and I said, man, I went to IIM Ahmedabad for this. So I came back, and within a few months, I quit.
Okay, but you quit. But then your current business, how did you drift into this?
Yeah, so for the first 7 years, so I just wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't have any big ideas. I had very small ideas. In the first 7 years, sort of, we drifted into a whole lot of small stuff: salary surveys, databases, some feasibility studies, some small-time consulting, some teaching, some training, some writing. I must have done about 10 or 15 different small things. And I'd done a smart thing. I'd married a classmate from Ahmedabad, and she was working in Nestle. So, we were living off her salary. And I was experimenting with my career. And I was actually quite happy. It takes about 2 years for a man to get used to living off his wife's salary. And after that, you're happy. Yeah. And, so life was going on. Sometimes I could take a salary, sometimes I could not. So I think in the first 10 years of being an entrepreneur, while we were bootstrapping, I took a salary for about a cumulative of 4 years. Yeah. And I would do a second job in the afternoons to somehow make both ends meet. I would, teach on weekends at local business schools as visiting faculty. I'd do all that kind of stuff. And then one day I went to sort of 7 years of drifting. And then one day I went to IT Asia. IT Asia was this big IT fair which is held in Pragati Maidan in Delhi every year. It's no longer held. It went away in the 2001 crash. It wasn't held after that. And IT Asia, I saw the internet for the first time. Right? And that's when that time there were only 14,000 internet accounts in the country. And I said, what is this? And he explained it to me. And I got the idea that let's just take jobs from newspapers around the country and put them on the net and see what happens. And so I went to this shop called Central News Agency in Connaught Place that gets newspapers from around the country. And I found out which newspaper on which day of the week in which part of the country carries appointment ads. And I discovered there were 29 newspapers around the country that carried appointment ads. And I simply began to buy them, once a week on the day of the appointment ads. And we began to dump the appointment ads in our own words. We had spoken to an IP lawyer and he said, look, the IP belongs to the advertiser, not to the newspaper. So the newspaper can't sue you. Second, the company is unlikely to sue you because you're only helping them get more applications. Third, the IP is only, the copyright is only on the specific language and the layout and look and feel. It is not on the knowledge that this such and such job is available. So if you put it in your own words, in your own format, there's no problem. Which is what we did. And traffic began to come. It's all free. And once traffic began to come, after 6 months, we began to get phone calls from companies saying, you know what, I've not put this job in a newspaper. If I send it to you, because newspapers are expensive, will you put it on your site? And we said, sure thing, 350 rupees a job, or 6,000 rupees annual subscription, and unlimited jobs for your company through the year. And so first year we made 2.5 lakh rupees, second year 18 lakh rupees. And I had never seen, now this sounds like peanuts today, but in 18 lakh rupees we broke even. I still couldn't take a salary, but we broke even on other costs. And that's when we figured that maybe this is a big idea after all. And after 7 years of drift, we stumbled upon a big idea. It was a fluke.
It wasn't a bad fluke. I mean, I guess for those people who want to be entrepreneurs, it's not always as quick and easy as Bhavish over there. It took Sanjeev a longer time, but it was worth it, right? The company is what, 2 billion, 1.7 billion? Around that much, right? So he's doing okay. How about you, Dipinder?
So I graduated out of IT Delhi in 2005. And while I was still in college, I actually tried to order food from Domino's over the phone, and I just couldn't get through. And then I said, there has to be an easier way to order food online, right? So right out of college, we had this online ordering startup. 60 restaurants on board, we used to get 2 customers every day, right? So it didn't work. We tried that for 6 months. We had to shut it down. 2005 was way too early for this business. And I then got into Bain. I spent 4 years there. And in late 2008, Bain gave us a 7-day Christmas break, and I was trying to think about what we did in the past, and then I thought that maybe people don't need online ordering. I should just strip off the commerce part of it and put out menu cards for people to see, right? And that's what I did. And I even stopped typing menu cards. I just like literally drove through Delhi over a weekend, collected all menu cards of all restaurants and put them online for people to see. Like in a very, very 1990s looking blue HTML links kind of a website. You had to click them and look at menu cards. We didn't even have search back then. I mean, search inside the website. You had to use the browser search to look for a restaurant name, right? So that was 2008. So eventually we started getting a lot of traffic. In about 12 months, we were still working on the site, and I was still at Bain, by the way. I did this alongside Bain for 18 months. And we started getting calls from restaurants saying that, just like you did, right? So we started getting calls from restaurants saying that they want to advertise with us. So we started making a little bit money. Eventually we thought that so we were 2 co-founders, we thought that if one of us just sells, we'll definitely make more money than what we do at Bain, right? And one guy can work on tech and one guy should just be selling. And so we literally like split up that Pankaj is my co-founder. Pankaj, you should do sales and I will do product and everything else, which is not sales. And till date, we continue doing the same, right? And when we started getting enough calls, we actually had to quit our jobs. And early 2010 is when we really started doing this full time. Back then, we had no idea whether this will be a large business, how we will make money. We had absolutely no clue. But over the next 3 years, we really figured it out. Our first seed round was a leap of faith by Sanjeev. He gave us $1 million for 1/3 of the company, which is pretty much close to the $2 million you paid for India. But now we are actually quite significant in presence. We expanded outside of India in 2012, and we've been doing great outside of India. We are in 22 countries right now. We made a few acquisitions in the last year. Overall, we're getting about 90 million visits every month. The good thing is that less than 10% of our traffic right now comes from India. So which makes pretty much, I think we're the only internet company in India right now which has that much of an international presence. So it's been a good ride.
Now, while you're about it, talk a little bit about your broader business model. What all do you actually do? Not everybody may have been using your site at the moment. Just tell me.
I think everybody uses the site. How many people have the Zomato app downloaded on their phones? Fair number, not all.
Not all, right? So just talk a little bit about that.
So the core business is still the same. We go out and get menu cards and scan them and put them online, right? So that hasn't changed. But technically, we are much better and fancier. Search works, right? We have an app as well. So more than 50% of our traffic is on the app. And so generally, the core value proposition to the user is that you can get information for any kind of restaurant outside, right? And we are only in the bigger cities. We don't go to the towns. And users write reviews, so you can get quality scores on restaurants as well. And that gives us all the traffic that we have. And now, listings are free, but we make money from selling advertising space to restaurants. So we have a large sales team which goes out to restaurants, sells them ad space on the website and the app. That's how we make money.
What's your dream? Where do you think you're going?
So I think now after 10 years, exactly 10 years after we started that online ordering website right out of college, it's all coming back to empowering transactions on Zomato as well, right? So advertising will be a good business. It's going to make a lot of money for us. But over the longer term, I think transactions have to come into Zomato, and we're getting into online ordering, we're getting into table reservations. So in the very long term, I would say like 5-7 years from now, we want to be, I mean, in a good way, the communication barrier between consumers and restaurants. Right. So whenever a restaurant wants to communicate to a user, they should be using Zomato, and whenever a user wants to communicate to a restaurant, they should be using Zomato. That's what
That's
we're
a
trying to
very
do.
elegant description of your business, I must say. You must use it.
Yeah.
You must use it often. But do you think you could actually become the global leader? Is it possible? Or is it too hard?
It's, I mean, it's very, very hard, right? So because every city is a different market. So if we're winning in Delhi, it doesn't mean that we'll win in Bombay. So it's got no energies at all. So we really have to go city by city and execute all over again in every city that we enter. So, but the advantage that we have with us is that the product is fairly there. So no new competitor can really like come up and match the product quality that we have quite easily. I mean, it will take them like 12, 18 months. In that time, we have the time to react and I mean, maybe make an even better product.
Yeah, which is a lot of time. Let me ask you, Mavish, on your business. How different is your model than Uber, for instance?
Sure.
What is it that you're doing that's different than what they're doing? Or
A
vice
lot of
versa?
things are different. You know, fundamentally, our model has been evolved from a very Indian business problem. Like I said, right? We started from an outstation taxi booking service. There was no Uber inspiration back then. It was more like, make my trip and flights kar diya, main taxi karunga. But you know, coming to today, there are multiple differences which make us, you know, a really Indian service. For example, you can pay in cash. You know, 90% of our customers want to pay in cash, and that's not going away. Especially when you go deeper into tier 2, tier 3 cities, that's not going away. You can book on a call center also. Again, as you go.
So in your case, customers can pay cash.
Yes, and large majority of the customers do pay cash.
So that is very different from Uber.
That's very different, and that in the entire business model is designed for cash. Then you can book on a call center. You need not have a app. So my mom doesn't know how to use an app.
Yeah, I know lots of people who use a call center, yeah.
Sorry?
I know lots of people who
Exactly.
use a call center to call you.
Especially as we've gone deeper and deeper into the country, in smaller towns, people prefer to call us first, get used to the service, because in smaller towns, they never even had a taxi service, right? Right. So this is the first time they're experiencing taxis, and you know, a taxi plus an app is just too scary for them. So they call us, book a taxi, and then over time get converted to an app customer. It's a great customer channel for us. Another way we're different is we allow you to schedule rides. A lot of Indians, only Mumbai and half of Kolkata had taxi services, right? A lot of, all other Indian cities never had a taxi service, so there's no behavior of hailing taxis in India. So people don't trust that category as much. So people prefer to schedule for the morning airport trip, or people prefer to schedule for any important meetings. And we offer that, right? So these are multiple ways on the consumer end where we are different. On the driver end also, we are building a very local solution for him. For example, we work very deeply with the ecosystem of car manufacturers, of banks and NBFCs to provide him more opportunities to come into the platform. We, for example, we launched this platform called Pragati, where SBI is the lead partner, and instead of a monthly EMI, the driver gives a daily EMI. And the driver loves it, SBI loves it, because their window of information comes down to a day instead of a month, and they pass on some of the benefit to the customer, to the driver.
Yeah. They're more likely to get their loan back if it's paid daily.
Sorry?
I said, they're more likely to get their money back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm sure they love that. Right. Okay. So tell me this, the challenges that Uber's facing on the regulatory issues, to what impact would they have on you? I mean, is it the same issues or not exactly?
See, to an extent, the entire industry has to work and solve the, the perception of safety and, build for safety. And, Ola, after the incident happened, we've taken many steps to make our platform much, much safer. For example, each driver is now vetted by a third party, by the police. We have an SOS button inside the app, etc. I think another thing which makes us more local is we deal with the government in a much better way than Uber. We are not arrogant about it. We are not, saying that we sit in the US and we don't care. We interface with the government. We engage with the government. We solve for their pain points. We understand their pain points. And the government, both at the center and the state, have been, they've been very clear that safety has to be, managed. And we have, adhered to all the guidelines they've put, and in many cases even gone further.
So in effect, you don't have an attitude problem.
I hope not.
Okay. Sanjeev, your model has become more complex over time, beyond a simply, Naukri job portal. Talk a little bit about how that's evolved at InfoEdge.
Yeah, so we launched Naukri in 97, and around end of 98, I sort of told our tech head that, that why don't you also do a matrimony site? We've done jobs, let's do one more classified category. And I gave him a little brief on a piece of paper, and within 3-4 days, we put up Jeevan Sathi. And we just let it float free of cost. Right? And we raised our Series A funding in April 2000, and when ICICI Venture came in, they said, what is Jeevan Sathi? They shut it down. We only wanted to do Naukri. So one of the other clauses in the in the investor agreement was that you will use a big 5 auditor. In those days there were 5. You will use a big 5 auditor and let go of your current auditors. So I went to meet our then auditors, 2 brothers, both had been senior to me in school, and that's how I knew them. I said, guys, sorry, but we've taken this venture capital. We'd raised $1.7 million, and we have to let you go. And they said, hey, you know what? We were thinking of quitting our CA practice and starting a .com anyway. That was bubble time, right? So everybody was starting a .com. So we said, great, why don't you take Jeevan Sathi? Because they've asked to shut it down, we don't want to shut it down, and we will retain 45% shareholding. So we gave them Jeevan Sathi free of cost, and as a farewell gift, and we retained 45%. And they ran it for 4 years, and they did a good job, but meltdown happened, they were unable to raise money. Naukri, meanwhile, began to make a profit after 2 years of losses, and the money was piling up in the bank, and we said, what do we do? We've got money in the bank, and we said, why don't we buy Jeevan Sathi back? So we went back to them and said, you're not going to do anything, and why don't we value? So we valued it at 6 crores and paid them some 3.5 crores and bought it back. So that is how we sort of diversified beyond Naukri. It was not a very scientific decision. And once we got Jeevan Sathi back, we said, you know what, we're not a job site company anymore, we are a internet classifieds company. And so what's the next category? And we said, why not real estate? And so we launched 99 acres. Of course, that was 2005, and so VC investments are coming back, internet is getting interest again in India, and so within 6 months of launch, there were 18 competitors. Okay, anyway, 99 acres happened, and then, we did the IPO in 2006, and one of the main objects of the issue was we will acquire companies for growth. Now, you see, you have to give, reasons why you're IPOing. The truth was we were profitable, and we were negative working capital, and we were so to demonstrate use of cash, we said we will do acquisitions. Right? But once we did the IPO and went out to acquire, we figured there was nothing to acquire because there was almost no internet company, that was there. Because they all died down in the meltdown. And then we said, okay, let's start early stage investing. And which is when we began to invest in other companies. So today, we have 4 verticals inside the company. We have education classifieds, matrimony, real estate, recruitment. We have an operation in the Gulf, in the Middle East for jobs. And we've also we invested in 9 companies, external startups, and of those, we wrote off 3, 6 are standing. So we have 6 companies that we invested in, apart from doing our internal business.
So let me ask you a question. You invested in some, you bought Jeevan Sathi back, that was a good one. Are there companies in which you didn't invest, which you think you should have?
So I met Bhavesh 2010?
2011 mid.
2011 mid, and I met him in the lobby of which hotel? Westin in Bombay. And he explained to me this outstation trip thing, and I said, yeah, the guy is super smart, but इसमें पैसा कैसे बनेगा? So many taxis, and you will make 50 rupees per taxi. How will you collect? It's such a disorganized market, and we passed. Yeah.
And so Bhavesh, how much money have you raised?
So far, 270 million.
270 million, right? What was the last valuation?
Around 700 million.
700 million.
We would have made money if we'd invested.
So you would have made some money. But you know, your story reminded me about buying Jeevan Sathi back is when I had exited, sold my first company. There was also a small joint venture that we had, which was doing very specialized engineering software for oil and gas sector, Schlumberger, Halliburton, and whatever. So the guys who bought the company, it was a large group, they didn't know what to do with it. So they said to me, listen, you know, we're going to have to shut this down because this is just, there's $1 billion of revenues and this company is doing like 1 million of revenues and none of us knows what to do with it. So we don't mind, we'll shut it down. So I asked them, what will it cost you to shut it down? And we had operations in the US, all over the place. So they did a calculation. They said it'll cost us almost $70,000, $80,000 to shut it down. And we said, okay, you know, why don't we just pay you half of that money and we'll buy it. And they said, no, you just take it. You know, we just don't want anything to do with it, just take the piece away. So we got it for nothing. And we actually sold that for more than we had sold the first company. It just took us about 4 to 5 years.
So you're the guys who started the recycling industry.
Yeah. No, it's funny. It doesn't end there because we sold it to this company called SAIC, just a $12 billion company. And they wanted to build this whole commercial services thing. They bought it. But the guy who bought it, who was the number 2 guy, didn't make it to number 1, got sacked. The next guy came in and said, why did we buy this stuff? We don't want commercial services. So they sold it to Wipro. And when they sold it to Wipro, all of these guys who'd gone with it came back to me and they said, look, we don't want to be with Wipro because we'll be small potatoes. Will you put up some money and can we buy it back again? So I did. I spoke to them and they said, no, not a third time. It's not going to happen. But anyway, just coming back to that, I just wanted to ask you, Dipinder. No, sorry, I asked you. I wanted to ask you, Bhavish. What is your ambition? Do you think you could, is it an India ambition? Do you think you could actually be, quote unquote, an Uber with less attitude globally? Is that possible or is it just too hard?
So I don't believe in the Uber way of scaling out into multiple countries where you copy a vanilla product from the West into every geography. You know. You're not solving the local problems. Plus, on top of that, there is this dynamic of 20% of the world living in India. And, you know, on the back of mobile smartphones really changing the way Indians consume, I think it's a huge opportunity for us to go deeper. You know, build on top of the mobile first fundamentals of our business, just serve more and more people in India. And, you know, when we started with Bombay, then we launched Bangalore, Delhi. And we always used to question internally in our team, you know, will a city like Bhopal ever have scale? Or will a city like, you know, Tirunelveli in Tamil Nadu ever have scale? And, you know, now we are in close to 100 cities across the country. And what we realized is infrastructure is broken in every city in India. And population density is high in every city in India. And the opportunity for change, for building a mobility product is as big in Bangalore, probably even bigger in Coimbatore or Madurai. And for now, we are very, very focused on India. We want to leverage our mobile first business and solve for the Indian market.
I think, Sanjeev, shades of the thinking that you guys have had, right? I mean, you did the same thing with the global majors, you know? I mean, you sort of wiped
around
them out.
2004, was the time when we bought back Jeevan Sathi, we had this money and we were saying that, look, the opportunity is to go international and become this emerging markets job site. Or should we diversify horizontally and launch more products or more businesses for India? And look, we are consumer guys, and we said we'll stay with the consumer we currently have. We understand consumers best, and you know, technology follows. So while we can always do the engineering to build job sites for Nigeria, for Kenya, for Uganda, but you know, we don't know the consumer there, we don't know the market there, so stay with market knowledge, and which is what we did.
Let me switch to something else, which I guess all of you read in the newspapers. Valuation, money raising. So when we were setting up our companies, Harish and I, there was nobody to give us any money. There was no VC money. There was no money of any kind. So we had to go IPO on our own, whatever it took. And then you move around to, let's say, Sanjeev's area. So he raised $1.7 million and went IPO. Deep, at Make My Trip raised more. What was it, 30, 40 million?
About that much, maybe 40, 50 million.
Okay, and he went IPO. Now, if you look at the monies that are getting raised, you've raised what you said, 270 million. Deepinder, how much have you raised? About 115 million. But I'm sure you'll both raise some more. There's Flipkart at what, $1.5 billion. There's Snapdeal at getting to $1 billion if the next deal happens or whatever. And when I look at what's happening here and what happened globally, I mean, from what I understand, Google raised about $25 million to IPO. Amazon raised a lot more, but I think Alibaba also raised under 300 million or whatever. Amazon, I think, was 3 billion plus. So one of the things that keeps coming as a thought process to say, what has changed? And, how will this model play out? Because one of the things certainly is, if everybody else has capital and you don't, then you're going to find it very hard to compete. But are we all sort of getting into riding the tiger? I mean, and what would happen if the money dries up? Is there a plan B that you have? And I know there's sitting on Sanjeev's board, we have these debates often. So I'm just curious, because you guys are right in the thick of it.
I think the way I see it is, the reason why we need to raise capital, it's not that I like diluting so much, right? The reason we need to raise capital is, I think the opportunities have become more global in the internet space. If I have a competitor in Uber, he will come to India and he will pump in money. I need capital. I need to make sure I win my local market. Right. Second, I think innovation is happening in parallel in the world. Uber and Ola started roughly the same time. China, I think in the broad three centers, China, India, the US, innovation is happening in parallel. So the opportunities are in parallel. So for the opportunity and to make sure that you win the market, and the market, especially in India, has also really exploded on the back of mobile. That's how I see it. And to make sure we capture that market, you need capital. Yeah. And I personally don't feel the valuations are too high. I obviously have a bias in saying that. But
so your view is that you will actually grow into those valuations if it's not there yet. I mean, exactly. there is a market to actually do that, and
there's such a huge market.
Yeah. And I see what you're saying in terms of the global competition.
No, I was speaking to one of the investors in Ola, and I think you have exceeded your growth targets by some 7x or 10x or something.
Yeah.
Sorry?
They set a growth target at the beginning of the year, they exceeded by 7x or 10x.
By 7 times, yeah.
The growth target, which was ambitious to start with.
I think we've been lucky to just have this two dynamics of mobile penetration going up so fast and people using mobile data so frequently.
Right, yeah. And I guess in your area, you are right. I mean, this is an area where there almost nothing exists.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember even you go to Lucknow and you can't get a cab.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not even a small town.
Yeah.
So I think in your area, you're right. You may actually be discovering a market that's large. How about you, Deepinder? Because in your case, it's a bit different. You're actually not looking just at the Indian market. So in many ways, it's a much broader spectrum.
So I've been around a bit longer than Ola, right? So 3 years more than Ola. So for the first 3 years, we actually didn't see this frantic activity of people getting a lot of money. So we were bootstrapping and literally building with $1 million. And then, so our first round was 1 million.
Certainly Sanjeev didn't give you a lot of money, right?
I mean, not much, right? But
listen, we were up against a competitive offer. So Zomato had been offered, $500,000 at 1.5 million. And my logic was that, listen, $500,000, you start looking, for money within 3 months. Take $1 million and, run for 9, 12 months and then see. So we gave $1 million at 2 million.
So the first round was 1 million. The second round was 3. The third was 2.5. So we were actually like building it bit by bit, right? So, but then I think what happened in 2012, that everybody understood that I can actually spend $10 to acquire a customer, and over the life of that customer will be worth 40 to me, right? So a lot of companies started getting a lot of cash just to spend and get those customers, right? Like in 2008, nobody used to get that. Right? And now what we see is that a lot of, and there's a lot of capital available in 2012, and there are a lot of these like startups, companies coming up trying to compete with you. The only way you can keep up and compete with their marketing spends is if you have those marketing spends, right? So luckily, I mean, we didn't face that problem because we were almost a monopoly in India, I mean, in our space and in a lot of markets as well. But right now, I mean, our sector is also getting a lot of this activity, right? So we are getting a lot of companies getting funded, and we will also need to get into that mode now.
You can't take your foot off the pedal.
It's not something that any company wants to do, but
You're
I mean,
left with no choice.
it's actually I mean, the market is actually forcing companies to do these things as well.
I think Zomato's ambitions are global, and to fuel those ambitions, capital will be required. Now, to some extent also, if wherever they're going into markets where they are strong entrenched players, it will be an expensive fight, right? And some capital is required for that as well. But in general, I would say Zomato has been reasonably capital efficient. It's been pretty capital efficient in each city it's gone to.
I think both of you have been more capital efficient. Now, I shouldn't ask you this, but what are your views on, let's say, Flipkart and Snapdeal? And then they're raising money in much larger chunks.
I think the opportunity for them is so large. I believe consumption of so many verticals will change from either offline or from web to mobile. And people are building war chests to fight that battle. I think both Flipkart and Snapdeal have a very large opportunity in front of them. And they have a global competitor trying to take away.
Amazon.
I think it makes sense for them to raise large amounts of capital.
So I don't think they have, if they're getting it, they don't have a choice. And if they don't get it, they're going to be in trouble. Because, see, you're up against Amazon. Amazon has said we'll put $2 billion into India. Rocket Internet, which now seems to have sort of fallen behind a bit, but was earlier sort of there and with big money. And if you look at the e-commerce companies that lost, I think one of the big reasons they lost was they failed to raise capital. So I think access to capital is a critical success factor in e-commerce.
Actually, one of my investors, in a very matter-of-fact way, told me that one of the big differentiators a startup can have is capital. And it's very true, because you can fight more strongly, you can grow into the market opportunity faster, and that's what makes the difference.
Of course, and although there are many reasons, as we were talking, there's one of the reasons you ended up buying taxi for sure and not the other way around. So I can see that point. But the thing that does strike one is to say, right now the sun is shining, but what if money starts to become more expensive? What happens then?
I think,
is it that it becomes that for everybody and so it doesn't matter? Or is there a plan B that all you guys keep thinking about?
I think every entrepreneur has to ensure the fundamentals of the business is not too screwed up. While the sun is shining, you need to still ensure that you're building a real business. You're not, you don't have your head in the clouds. And I think that's what separates good companies from great companies. If you ensure, while take advantage of the of the wave, but also make sure your business is strong enough and solid enough to last through a dry run. And at Ola, we faced a tough time before Series A and between Series A and Series B, because India was, our segment was not that sexy. For example, when Uber entered India, they've been around for 2 years. I had 3 crores in the bank, and we were doing 2,000 orders a day. They just started off, so delta was not much, and I had 3 crores in the bank, and that was a tough time for us. But I think from that to now, we've been able to retain a reasonably good, fundamentals of the business, while we've been able to make sure.
How many taxi rides are you doing in a day now?
More than 300K.
3 lakh taxi rides a day.
Yeah. And I guess in many ways, Dipinder, you're doing that as well, because I know you're expanding aggressively, but when you find there are challenges, you're not willing to stand on ego. You are willing to relook where you should be and shouldn't be, right?
Yeah. I mean, so we guys actually look at our markets country by country, right? And I mean, a couple of countries are already profitable for us. A lot of countries are on path of profitability to us. I mean, if capital dries out, we will pull out from 2 countries, and we're done. That's it. So it doesn't matter a lot.
You're sitting in a good spot. I want to tell all of you in the audience that in a second I'll be coming around to you guys. So any questions you have of this panel, please start thinking about it because I'll be back to you in a minute. So I want to ask maybe one last question. You know, when I did my first startup, I was 40 years old. So everybody I hired would listen to me because, you know, I said, look, let me tell you from my experience how this works, right? And that I think was maybe true of Harish. I don't know if that was true of you, Sanjeev. What was your age when you started?
So when I quit my job, I was 27, but we had no employees, right? Then we hired a peon. Okay, and then we hired one data entry operator, and for the first couple of years, that's how we ran, right? When we raised venture capital, we were 16 people running out of my house, one floor of the house, and you know, there wasn't that kind of problem. Today we are 3,700 people. I'm 51 years old, so you know, so I mean, my voice gets heard, right?
No, see, there's the age and there's the experience. So, for example, many of us, like I'd worked in large companies, run lots of people. So there's a lot of learning about organizational issues, structures, HR, a million things, right? Now, you guys have gotten lucky far earlier than I did. And I just wonder, if I look at you, Bhavesh, you know, if I was working for you, I'd say, who's this kid? You know, what is he telling me? What does he know about anything? Did you have that challenge? What is your challenge on HR issues, on people and managing them?
When I started off, you know, I thought I will never hire a very old guy. I used to have this artificial 30-year-old bar that I will not hire anybody above 30. But, you know, but over...
Anybody in the audience below 30? Two people.
So, but I think today, age is a number. That's my perception. I've hired so many people who are 40, 50 plus now. I've learned the value of experience. As long as the entrepreneur understands the value of experience, and as long as the person you're hiring understands the value of youth, they both work well together. And the value that I bring to the table is I have passion, I have a vision for the company, which is driven from my young age. And for example, my HR head is like 45-year-old. And he's a great guy. He brings all the experience of managing such a large company. And we work very well together.
That's spoken with maturity beyond your years. I can see why you're successful. So Dipinder, what about you? Do you find challenges? Because, you know, at the end of the day, for all your businesses, I mean, people are such a key issue.
Yeah, we are actually a very people-driven business. We have 1,500 people across the globe now. So yes, it's a challenge, right? So trying to do what we do, but at the end of the day, you don't have a choice, and you really have to learn a lot in a very short span of time, right? To actually do what you want to do, right? So you said that there are two things, age and experience. There's one more thing, which is actually context, right? So when you are talking to a very senior person, I think as founders, as like people who have been at an organization for a long time, you just have a lot more context around the business. So that actually balances stuff out. It's not always like you listening to someone or that guy listening to you, right? Experience comes on one hand, and then there's context. So both these things balance each other very well.
You guys can see from the answers why all these guys are doing well, right?
No, I'll tell you, Saurabh. So you're 29, 31, 32. So I'm 51. So when I go back 20 years and I say when I was 29 or 32, I mean, there is no comparison. Though today's entrepreneurs, the guys who are starting doing these companies, are so much brighter than I was at their age. So I think it's truly a new generation which is doing really, really well.
I can tell you from where I sit, absolutely no question about that. I wasn't anywhere near these guys when I was their age.
Having said that, like whenever we now meet 21-year-olds, we're like, these guys are way too much
Exactly.
smarter than what we were when we were 21.
Yeah. Well, that's very good news for India, though, I must say. You know, this is very good news. And so the angel investing that we are doing, therefore, is the right thing to do. We're all going to make lots of money around that. Let me actually throw it open to the audience a little bit. I mean, anybody in the audience would like to ask anyone a question? Yeah, please, somebody give them a mic.
Yeah, with these cabs, you reduce my use of my car with my belligerent drivers. Similarly, for Zomato, I will say that I told my wife, she wanted to hire cooks and other things. Already a 200 square feet kitchen in Mumbai is costing 40 lakh rupees, if the price is 20,000 a square feet. And then all those Maharaj and everybody, how much they cost. So I said, in my 1 kilometer area, there are 23 restaurants with 46 chefs, and they are all your chefs.
He deserves a clap. This is the right thinking. And
So people should better save on kitchen's cost and save on Maharaj's cost and come to you.
so Dipinder just hopes more people think like you.
I now got my next marketing campaign.
Brilliant. Yeah. Anybody else who wants to ask any question? Anything from them? Yeah, please. A mic to him.
My question is to Sanjeev. I'm Kashyap from Elara Capital. Given that I work with tech companies for a living, one of my observations has been that most, in fact, most great tech companies around the world, they've had a history of solving one big problem right, and thereby delivering returns to the shareholders and for themselves. But you have had a history of, spawning multiple market leaders. Either they be your investee companies or they be your businesses, whether it be Naukri, whether it be Zomato, whether it be 99 Acres or even Policy Bazaar. So, what's the secret sauce behind, building multiple winners, which is, so to say, an outlier in the tech world?
To some extent, I think we also got lucky. But, let's say we got one business, Naukri. It was hugely cash accretive. We did that right. Once we did that right, and there was one business generating cash at a time when there was no venture capital in India, because after the dot-com crash of 2001, venture capital vanished, and we were profitable from 2003 onwards. Once we got that right, we were able to deploy that cash in other places at a time when there was very little competition, right? And the fact that there was very little competition means 99 Acres got to market leadership naturally. It was the only one, and then we executed well. I think on Zomato or on our portfolio companies, we made our mistakes. Okay, the truth is that you don't really know a good company from a bad until you've seen 300, right? We made mistakes. We passed all our cabs. We made some other mistakes where we wrote off a few, had to write off a few investments. But I think today we have a pretty much a bit of a template that these are the 8-10 things you should look at and look for. Since we are entrepreneurs and we've sort of built internet businesses ourselves, we believe we can spot the good ones earlier than most financial investors can. And I think that helps us. But having said that, let me say that we have not built Zomato, we have not built Policy Bazaar. I mean, it's the entrepreneurs who do it. We just sort of back them. So हम नहीं करते, ये लोग करते हैं.
Yeah, that's a fair question. Any other question?
I'll tell you one more thing. You meet a lot of venture capitalists who will say, this is our company, we did it. Truth is, money is a commodity. Right? A good entrepreneur can get money from multiple sources. Right? So entrepreneurs build companies, investors don't. Investors back entrepreneurs who build companies.
Good. That's common to note. Most VC funds wouldn't like you after this, but you're not looking for their money, so you're okay. Yeah. Anyone else with any question? Yeah, one at the back.
From Calcutta. Just one question. I've started using Ola cabs quite a bit. Just something of the economics which I can't understand on this is, I stay, when I take the Ola cab from the airport to where I stay, most of the time, most of the drivers refuse to go there. Okay, and even if they go there, they ask for more money. When I take Ola, it's an air-conditioned car. They never refuse. They never ask for extra money.
This is Calcutta?
Yeah, Calcutta. How does the driver, the owner, make money out of that deal when a taxi driver is not able to do it?
Sure. See, fundamentally, the difference is the taxi driver feels that if he goes there, he will not get a fare back. Hence, he asks you for more money, or he refuses outright. With Ola, the problem we are solving is we are aggregating both demand and supply, and that's why the platform makes more and more sense as we get bigger and bigger, because the more demand we have, the more supply likes us. The more supply we have, the more consumers like us. So what's happening is you're getting an Ola ride from the airport to home. And from there, the driver can wait half an hour and he'll get another ride to somewhere else in the city, and then he'll go there and get another ride, right? So that's played out in every city we get to. Initially, early days, it doesn't play out, but we seed the market, we market aggressively in those cities, we acquire supply aggressively, and as the city scales, this is the script everywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah. My question is to Sanjeev. What is the difference in the business model of 99 acres and housing.com, which has got enough publicity and funds recently of late? So what is the difference you see in the business model actually?
Yeah.
Well,
Housing.com has a business model, right?
That's what I was going to ask.
no, so I tell you, 99 acres gets revenue from brokers, builders, developers. We also get owner listings, but for owners, the basic listing is free, and then we try and upgrade some of them to higher value listings and try and get some money from owners as well. But by and large, our money comes from brokers, builders, and developers. They pay us for a few things. They pay us either for a listing of a property, right? Or they pay us for branding and microsite. Yeah. That's the 99 acres business model. Housing, I think, is got shades of this. Some of this, not all of it. So, and they're still evolving. In the past, they said we don't want brokers, but now they're talking to brokers as well. Then along the way, they said we'll do rentals, not resale. And now, what we have heard is that they're focusing on tying up with builders and doing primary sales. So I guess everybody's experimenting, everybody's evolving, and people will figure out the business models over time.
Yeah. Harish, you would want somebody give?
Me? Okay, not me. We're focused on India.
All three of you will focus on Indian marketplace?
No. He's in 22 countries and 225 cities. So he's genuinely global. We are focused on India, and we went to the Middle East because our clients demanded it. Basically around 2003, we sort of went through our client list and discovered that we got a couple of hundred clients from Dubai, and we never even marketed there. They were just coming and buying because they wanted to hire Indians to take them there. So we put 2 sales guys in Bombay saying, you got to fly to Dubai twice a month and service these clients, try and upgrade them and get more revenue. And within 6 months, we had 600 clients and paying a lot of money. And they said, we can't service out of Bombay anymore. We have to open a local office. So we opened a local office, and then there were 1,000 clients. And then these clients began to say, launch a local job site for the Middle East because there's only one player, it's very expensive, and we need a second player. And so we launched operation in the Middle East. So we were led by our customers, but we have not gone anywhere else. So our primary focus is India. When Zomato first came and we did the deal, it was a India-focused company. After 3-4 years of figuring out India, they decided to go overseas, and and that again was first Middle East, first Dubai, with lots of Indians, and then elsewhere, I guess. But we will be largely India-focused.
What is your experience on the export front?
So for us, there's no export apart from the product that we have, right? So we have teams everywhere. So, I mean, every city that we're in, we're setting up a local office. So, I mean, we have to work with multicultural, multi-language teams. It's quite hard.
It's very strange that the IT BPO services business is all export driven. If you ask them to do India business, they all say we are not interested. Substantially because of the very complex and the procurement processes for services in India. Versus for the product business, what we hear is a lot more India focused and not export focused. So glad to see that some of you are really also focused equally on the outside India also.
So yeah, there's
Ravi Menon
Okay,
from,
sorry,
yeah.
you have the mic, so go ahead. Yeah.
All right, Ravi Menon from Elara. So just a question, on you talking about lifetime value of customers. So, in developing markets, I would assume that these are, because we are poor economies, the lifetime value should be lower. But what I've heard is that advertising rates are pretty much the same around the globe for display ads. So how do you, get around to spending the same amount of money in different markets with different lifetime value of customers?
So I would qualify that by saying that we don't spend on marketing anywhere we go. So we just build the product organically. But see, if we are spending $1 on advertising, right? I think those markets also bring in that much more for us as well. So India is an outlier where the media rates are very, very, very high, right? But in all the other markets, we have seen that, let's say, a Philippines would have less media rates than a UK, just in the proportion of the currency that they have, right? India is pretty much the only exception we've seen. So if we are spending $1 in Philippines, we'd make $10 out of Philippines. If we are spending £5 for the same media space in UK, we'll be making £50 in UK. So that's how the math would generally work.
Just a follow-up. So why do you think media rates are so high in India?
I think because there are a lot of people buying media in India.
A lot of VC-funded.coms, and they keep bidding up media rates.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the only answer I can give.
Okay. There was somebody here, right? You can just give the mic there.
Yeah, I'm Shankar. I'm from Tamil Nadu, and we still buy Horlicks Gold. So your trip to Madurai wasn't a waste. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now my question is, since you have experience on internet-based businesses, have you seen any business happening elsewhere in the world which is waiting to happen in India? Just some random.
So you're asking me the question?
Yeah.
So truthfully speaking, we never ever look at businesses top down that this has worked in the US, so let's try it in India. You got to focus on the customer, and you got to find the unsolved problem. So I think successful businesses are built on deep customer insights. So Naukri, actually the idea came when I was in HM, and I used to observe everybody read Business India from the back because there were appointment ads in the back. And that's when I figured that jobs are a very high interest category of information. This is the insight I got in 1990. We didn't launch Naukri in 97 because there was no internet then. So I didn't know what to do with this insight. But, and even, Deepinder has not told you the full story. When we first met, I asked him, where did you get the idea from? And he said, at Bain, we have a cafeteria where there are menu cards from 80 restaurants, and, people order lunch, and there's a long line of people waiting to look at the menu cards, and you can't take them to your desk because it's a shared resource. So one weekend, I just scanned the menu cards and put them on my office intranet page, my personal page, and 2 days later, the IT infra guy came to me and said that, what have you done? Why are you getting so much traffic? And that's when I figured that if you just put up menu cards, traffic will come, customer insight, right? Bhavesh started a travel company and figured people didn't want to book his trips, but they wanted to book cabs, customer insight. So I think the best business opportunities are identified bottom up rather than top down. So we don't do a lot of macro analysis to figure out, let's work in the US, let's do it in India, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nimish from Elara Capital. I'm extensive user of Ola and Zomato. Fortunately, I didn't have to use Naukri.com, so good for me.
Jeevan Sathi?
No, not even that. So, since beginning, we spoke a lot about valuations and higher valuations and more valuations, but we never spoke about the profitability or the margins what you guys are making, or on except Naukri, which he said that he's making profits. So, when do investors see profits or cash flows coming in, or is the story like Flipkart and all, they're still burning just cash and, there's still time to make
I think more than the investors, the entrepreneurs also want to make profits.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to dilute equity to raise more money. But, I think, right now, when I look at Ola, there are many cities which are profitable for us. But there are many cities when we're growing so fast, we're investing for growth, we're fighting competition, where it's a land grab essentially. And to win the battle and fundamentally the business model will make a lot of profits. It's very simple. I don't need any infrastructure to service the customer. So right now it's about market growth, it's about market capturing, but eventually it's a very profitable business.
So let's discuss your growth. I mean, you were 3.5 lakh trips a day today, roughly. And what were you a year ago?
This time a year ago, we were around 5,000 trips a day, 6,000 trips a day.
So you've gone up 70x.
Yeah.
Okay, and what is the target when you, a year ago, what did you set?
Around 30, 40,000.
So they thought they grew, they wanted to grow sort of, 6x, they've grown, what, 60x.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything?
So I think profitability is a state of mind, right? So I mean, all of these companies can be profitable in a matter of 3 months, the day they want to be profitable. The basic underlying fact is that in pockets, they know that their business model works, right? And they just need to scale that to their entire company. So as soon as competition dries out, or even like if say funds dry out, like getting to profitability will not be a problem. It's just a state of mind.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying is your business is sound, the model is sound, the mathematics works, but because you have to expand aggressively because others are and protect your turf.
They're simply going for growth.
Everybody's spending. Yeah, you have to go for broke, but the day you don't, you're fine. That's not bad. Right? Anybody else?
Yeah. So first things first, Sanjeev, I found my wife on jeevansathi.com, so thank you very much.
I'm glad you're still happy.
Very much, thank you very much. So I have a question to Bhavish. Bhavish, I'm from Chennai and I've been a very loyal taxi for sure customer, for a while now. And the only reason being because of the awesome pricing, right? Now the thing is, the moment that goes away, I'm not sure, I'll get indifferent again. So I think you mentioned that you figured out the cost of acquisition of a customer might be $10, but he might be worth $40 over, the lifetime of the product. So, if you can't so if I'm going to shift tomorrow, say, I might still stick to Ola, or I might go to Uber or whatever. So if I'm indifferent at that point in time, where do you see that conversion from 10 to 40 happening? Is it still theoretical or?
No, see, I think great businesses are built when you build value for the customer. Price is never the value, right? Price is the other end of the equation. You build A, B, C, and the customer is willing to pay P, right? That's our, at Ola, that's what we deeply believe in. How can we improve the experience for the customer? One thing is, can we make your payment experience simpler? We launched a wallet. Can we make, 1 year ago, our average wait times for an Ola were 30 minutes. Now they're 8 minutes, and they're trending downwards in all our cities. Can we make the driver more polite towards you? That's a tough thing, but we're working on it. So fundamentally, it's about building more value for the consumer, which will make the consumer locked in. It's never about price.
And also, you see, I think when you have an app-based business, right, there'll be only so many apps someone will keep on his mobile desktop. There's limited real estate there. So will you keep 4 taxi apps on your desktop a year from now? May not be. Today you may have 4, or maybe yesterday you had 4, today you have 2, maybe. So it's about also getting somebody to use you so often and building a dependency where you are the only, taxi app on his mobile desktop. And once you do that, you have 100% share, at least for that customer.
Right, you got your answer. Any other questions?
There's a question at the
Somebody
back.
had it?
Oh, that piche.
Where?
At the back.
Oh, right, way at the back, and somebody. You guys must be saying something interesting. Even backbenchers are interested now.
My question is to Mr. Bhavish. The question is a little IT related. So the app has gotten as advanced as it could get. It's really user friendly. So my question is, what's next? What's going to make your app different from, say, Uber or Meru, for example?
So there's one thing that Dipinder had written in a blog many years back, which I got really inspired by. So it's about not being different, it's about doing things better, right? I don't know whether you remember writing that. Yeah, that's so true, right? Being different is not the goal in life. How can you do better? How can you solve the customer problems better? Which is, in the way I see my customer, my car should be there 2 minutes when he wants it. He should be able to pay for it very seamlessly. The driver experience and the car experience should be very clean, hygienic, courteous to him. How can I work more and more on that and make it a better experience for him? If I do that, like Sanjeev said, the customer is going to only have one app on his phone, and that will be Ola.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Related question. Like in manufacturing, you can patent, copyright a lot of products and designs. So in your businesses, can you say, like your app or whatever you have, can you patent a copyright so that you build some barriers to entry?
I think there are software patents, but fundamentally the barriers to entry are just customer recall of your product. And in our business, specifically, the network effects are very strong. The customer wants lower arrival times. If I have more supply, I will give him lower arrival times, hence I'll get more customers, hence I'll get more cars. Right? So that's the barrier, that's the real barrier to my business, not really a patent.
So I have a point to add. If you look at any product, it is very easy to copy how it looks. It is not easy to copy how it works, right? Because there's so much inside behind that product which you really can't see. So anybody who copies a product will not be able to build the same business anyway.
My sort of submission to anybody who's doing any sort of business is that an aggressive legal strategy in India is never a good idea, simply because it takes 20 years to decide a case, right? And then it sucks up management bandwidth, and you don't know what domino you're starting, and then where it'll end up at. I think if you file a patent or a copyright, it should be more for defensive purposes, that you shouldn't be prevented from using your own product because somebody else put a patent on something similar, right? So that, and secondly, we have not filed for a single patent so far. Simply because in filing for the patent, you have to disclose so much that people will copy you, and in India you'll never get a court order, right? So it's a good idea to, if you're doing something good, keep quiet about it.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Let me just ask one last question to you guys. What's your big fear? What keeps you awake at night?
For me, it's about how can I get more drivers on the platform? How can I ensure they are top quality? How can I ensure the drivers get to buy cars at a reasonable rate of interest? That's fundamentally my business, and that's my biggest focus. Because in India, the utilitarian nature of our business is such that there is never a dearth of demand. But we don't have enough skilled people who can understand customer service, who can service the middle class well enough.
So I think what keeps me awake at night is figuring out how to build a team which can let me sleep at night.
That's a good, how to build a team that good.
Which will let me sleep at night.
Well, I think for us, the big challenge that is emerging over the last 6 months, 1 year, and is likely to continue going forward is that there is so much money coming into India. We're a listed company. There's so much money coming in India, and while we have what we think is a reasonable sized, war chest and treasury, how do we compete with this kind of capital, whether it's for investments in other companies or it is in our operating businesses where so much capital is going into our competitor companies? I think these are the things we worry about right now, but we worry about different things every quarter. So our worries evolve.
Yeah, and I should say, Dipan, that was a good one, because actually what I have found personally is that that's the best success strategy. So long as you can keep on getting into your team people who are much better than you, are smarter, and if you can somehow motivate them to own your problems, you can sleep at night because they will not. Then you're okay. Yeah. Well, I think that brings us, did you want to say anything, Raj? No? Okay. No, so it brings us to the end of this brilliant discussion today. Thank you very much for being here, guys. Let's give them a really big hand. Yeah. Because these are the folks that are actually creating the next generation of value, wealth, employment, whatever it is in India, of course for themselves as well, as you heard. And in many ways will take the frontier much further than what we did in the IT services side. So it was a delight to have you all with us. Thank you.